2. Alright, so today we're talking about RE9, Resident Evil Requiem. This game was probably the most anticipated game of the year for a ton of people, and it's also trying to do something no other game I know of has pulled off, and that is be an action horror and survival horror at the same time. And although this game isn't perfect and occasionally feels like two games in one, it still did not disappoint, and is a top tier Resident Evil game. Let's start out with the gameplay. As I said, this game's kinda two games in one. You have Grace's survival horror and Leon's action horror. So for a lot of the topics, I'm gonna basically go over them twice. I'm going to start out with the combat for Grace. She has the RE7 and 8 combat. The shooting is good as ever, and the guns hit even harder. They even do this cool thing where the controller quickly vibrates every time you get a head explosion. One thing that they changed with Grace is that she has way less guns than 7 and 8. She only has 2 basic pistols and the Magnum, which is called the Requiem, titled after the game, which is fun, and it has relatively low ammo, of course. This is a very interesting choice, giving you only a pair of fundamental pistols and the get out of jail free card that is the Magnum, which you get at almost the very start of the game. I really like the Requiem, by the way. It's probably my new favorite Resident Evil Magnum. Not only does it look and sound super cool, but you get to use it a lot more because you get it at the beginning of the game. Although Grace has less guns, she does have a lot of other tools to fight off zombies. The knives are a bit more prominent in this game because not only can you use them to attack, but you can also use them as escape items, like in RE1 Remake. And after you use it as an escape item, you can also kill the zombie and get it back. They do have durability though, so you can't use them forever. Grace also has access to these antivirus injectors that you can use to stealth attack enemies and make them explode. The problem is you have to craft them with empty injectors, which are a bit rare and also used to craft some big upgrades, so I never really used them that much. Lastly, one really fun thing they did with Grace is they made the RE4 style shoot into melee combo make sense for survival horror. She doesn't like do a roundhouse kick or anything, she just kinda pushes them down, but it still works really well and is super useful. Now on to Leon's combat. His combat is pretty well the RE4 Remix combat, and is subsequently very good. I don't think it's quite as good as an RE4, but a lot of it still carries over. The shooting is still good, and Leon has a very wide selection of good guns to use. The shoot into melee combos have been expanded a bit. Now there are a couple different types. If you're far away, he'll do a sprinting kick. If you're next to a wall, he'll smash him into the wall. The wall one's a bit of a double-edged sword, because sometimes you want to kick them into the other enemies, but you end up smashing them against the wall, and accidentally leave yourself open for an attack for a moment. One thing I didn't like is that once you get into the main Leon section, enemies stun way less easy, and parries are less powerful. The parries don't give you a chance to melee like it did in 4 Remake. It just kind of makes them stand still for a bit. Parries in general are still good though. One good change though is that Leon can now resharpen his axe. So even though the parries aren't as powerful, you can do them a lot more often. Leon also can now use some one-time use weapons like throwing spears, rebar clubs, and throwing explosive barrels. All that's fun for a quick advantage in a fight. There are also sometimes chainsaws you can use for a bit longer, which is a nice little power trip. But unlike the other tools, the zombies can also pick up the chainsaws, and it can be a bit awkward to try to fight off the zombies and try to get the chainsaw as quickly as possible. I think fighting over the chainsaw mostly works. It creates some good tension. Lastly, Leon can also do stealth kills, and that works alright. It's basically your run-of-the-mill action game stealth kill. It works fine. Before we get into the rest of this, if you like a mix of action and survival horror, check this out.
What Happens After Midnight, my action survival horror game, is available right now. You're sent to investigate the town of Nightvale and quickly find out interdimensional forces are invading our world. Hop between worlds, meet strange characters, and survive cosmic horrors once you find out what happens after midnight. Also, any feedback is greatly appreciated.
The enemies are actually mostly the same between both characters, and that's actually kind of impressive how they made them work for two very different playstyles. In both scenarios they're good enemies, and I like how in Grace's campaign they're able to make a single zombie feel like a threat again, and at the same time in Leon's sections you can feel that he's at minimum killed hundreds of these things, possibly thousands, and you get a real power trip. The bosses that you actually fight in a traditional sense are all fought by Leon, and they're good bosses, although two of them feel pretty similar, and another boss gets fully repeated once. Grace does have some harder to kill and invincible enemies that force you into some stealth horror sections. These parts aren't great because there aren't a lot of opportunities for you to circle around the enemies, and sometimes you have to go down long stretches of hallway and just sort of backtrack and go down those same hallways a couple of times.
Go the other way! Did you get me this way? Fuck! Go the other way! Why? There's nowhere to fucking hide.
Maybe they were kind of trying to make things harder, but it just comes off as annoying. The crafting, upgrades, and resources are all still really good. They even have a new blood crafting mechanic where you can use blood to make different resources, including bullets, like it's Bloodborne or something. They also brought back the coin system from RE7, which is good. Altogether, this aspect of the game is really well done. They make things feel worthwhile by giving you meaningful upgrades and resources that reward exploration and doing side objectives. Now let's get into the level design. There are two main sections of the game: Grace in the Care Center and Leon in Raccoon City. The Care Center is an almost perfect survival horror experience with open linear level design, where you collect different items that open up new areas as you play the game. Raccoon City isn't quite so perfect, but it's still very good. Here it's more linear, but also more action-packed. Most of the boss fights and cinematic gameplay set-piece moments are here. There's not a ton of set pieces in this game, but the ones that are in it are very good. The main problem with Leon's section is that the level design for the more average, not as cinematic parts is just kind of okay. They don't have that same intensity that the fights in RE4/RE4 Remake and RE5 did. It feels less chaotic in a bad way. The story is fairly good, and it might be one of the better RE stories. But firstly, before I get into it, I'll say that the Winter's story is complete with RE8. This is a new chapter in Resident Evil, so don't expect the end of a trilogy. All the Molten stuff is done with RE8. Anyway, so let's get into the characters of RE9. Leon and Grace make for a very good contrasting pair of protagonists. Grace is not only new to fighting zombies, but is also scarred by the brutal death of her mother, while Leon's been fighting for decades and has learned to carry a lot of built-up pain. Grace in particular is written very well. She's sort of done similarly to Ashley in the RE4 remake, where they allow her to be vulnerable at first and then let her slowly rise up to the challenges in front of her. If she were written by a game writer that was chasing Hollywood trends like unfortunately some other games have been doing, if she was written by someone doing that, she would have been a terrible character who spent most of her time blaming others for her problems instead of focusing on building up her own determination. Luckily we didn't get that. Instead she's written well and focuses on building herself up. Leon also has some good character development, where we see him struggling to endure after all that he's been through. Also, although they're not as good as in RE4, he does still have some good one-liners left in him.
Let me guess. You must be the town lumberjack.
I also like that Sherry is being Leon's woman in the chair getting intel for him. It makes his conversations about what would usually just be a bunch of plot stuff feel a bit more personal. As for the villains, they're good, but they don't have super good on-screen motivation, but they do have good on-screen presence and are fun characters to watch. As for the plot, it's fairly good. I do like how it feels like it's bringing a lot of plot points from the older games all together. There are some nostalgic pulls, but they're done pretty well. The aesthetics in this game aren't the best in the series, but they're still very good. And also they have some incredible graphical fidelity. One of the best looking games I've seen in terms of realism. When talking about art direction, the Care Center is another great, spooky old location, and Raccoon City does have a bit too much gray in its color palette, but it does feature some cool, destroyed buildings. If I have one minor complaint with the aesthetics, it's that the parry animations don't line up with the attacks a lot of the time. This was already a bit of a problem in RE4 Remake, but it feels worse here. Other than that, the animations are in general very good. One last thing is that you can freely switch between third and first person camera for both Grace and Leon at any time. But the game does recommend using first person for Grace and third person for Leon, and so do I. The game definitely feels better when played in its intended perspectives, but maybe if you're doing a second run or one of those people that really hates first person, it would be good for you. Maybe next time they'll add a fixed camera option. That would make for a fun second run. Overall, this is a very fun game that somehow manages to have both great survival horror and very fun action horror. And I'm giving it a 9.14. Now let's get into some spoilers. This is your big spoiler warning. I think the biggest thing that really feels like it's gonna change the series is that this game seems like that it's leading toward 10 being set around the same time and also being the end of the series. Chronologically, of course, I'm sure that they'll have plenty of remakes and prequels and maybe even eventually move things forward with some sort of new mutation. And all virus cure is a huge deal, and it's definitely going to change things. That was basically my only major thing. Now I'm going to talk about some smaller random stuff. Firstly, Zeno feels like a weird character. He is cool, but it is weird that he's just sort of coming in and taking Wesker's role beat for beat. He'll probably end up being like a clone of him or something, but it still kind of feels like they did an in-universe recast. Secondly, I got a minor nitpick that kind of drove me nuts. It's that section where Grace needs Emily to read the Braille. Like, it feels really ridiculous that she needs her. Like, why can't she just press all the buttons and see what symbols pop up? Or I know she's socially awkward, but she could just ask her for what the Braille symbol for sun, moon, and star are. I couldn't find any explanation online, It seems like a ridiculously obvious plot hole, and it just kind of annoyed me. Lastly, I just want to say that motorcycle chase was probably one of the coolest moments in gaming ever. Now, I would have liked to have more control over the movement of the bike, but it was still a great spectacle. And whenever they eventually remake RE6, I'm definitely going to expect that motorcycle chase to be like 1,000 times better than it was in the old one. So anyway, that's about it. Thank you to anyone who likes, comments, or subscribes. That's it.